By the time we were sent out, it wasn't being called a delay anymore. 9 hikers were missing, and every day without a message made it harder to believe we'd find them alive. We moved along the route in small groups, checking the obvious places first: valleys, tree lines, any spot that looked like it could hold a camp. The weather didn't care why we were there. Wind in your face, snow drifting back into our tracks, everything the same color. On February 26th, we climbed onto the slope near the pass and saw it. A tent. It was still standing, but it didn't look lived in. It was partially buried under wind-packed snow. Around it were poles and skis left in place. If you've camped in winter, you know what a packed-up site looks like. This wasn't it. We started clearing snow. The entrance area was blocked. We dug and pulled at the crust until we could see enough canvas to understand what we were looking at. Then I saw the cut. Not a zipper or buttons. Not the normal way in or out. An opening through the fabric. We cleared more snow and checked inside. No one. What hit me next was what was still there. Boots, warm clothes, gear. The things you do not leave behind if you're walking away in that kind of cold. Someone noticed a flashlight on the tent and tested it. It still worked. Outside, a short distance downslope, we found the footprints. They led toward the trees. And some of those prints didn't look like proper boots. That was the moment it stopped feeling like we were going to find a group waiting for help. The story these tracks told was that they left fast. They went downhill, and they did it without taking proper precautions. We stood there on the slope, looking between the tents and the tree line, trying to understand one simple thing. What makes 9 people leave their shelter at night?
The Dyatlov Pass incident refers to the deaths of 9 hikers in the northern Ural Mountains in early 1959. Their leader was 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. The case became well known because of the evidence pattern. The group left their tent at night in severe conditions, moved downhill toward the forest, and were recovered in different locations. Some deaths were consistent with hypothermia. Some involved severe blunt trauma. The original investigation closed in 1959 without naming a specific event clearly enough to settle public questions. Later reviews and research tried to narrow the most plausible natural causes. The people in this case weren't random travelers. Winter trekking was organized and competitive in that era, and this was a high-difficulty expedition. Most of the group were students in their early 20s. 2 were women, Zinaida Komugarova and Lyudmila Dubinina. One member stood out, Semyon Zolotuyaryov. He was older than the rest and not part of the original student circle. In group terms, that matters. It means this wasn't just classmates traveling together. Photos from the early days show people who look cold and tired at times, but normal. They pose with gear, joke for the camera, and keep moving. There's no obvious sign of crisis in the early record. There was also supposed to be a 10th hiker. Yuri Yudin started the trip, but turned back on January 28th due to health problems. He was the last person to leave the group and survive. Yudin went home. The others kept moving north. That split is the last ordinary fork in the timeline. The expedition began with routine travel. On January 23rd, the group left Sverdlovsk by train, heading north. Over the next days, they moved through Ivdel and then to Vishai, often described as the last inhabited settlement on their route. After Vishai, they continued toward remote work sites and logging areas. Once the road ended, everything came down to what they could carry, what they could build at camp, and how much ground they could cover on skis. On January 27th, they began the main ski trek toward Otortu. On January 28th, Yudin turned back. After that, it was the 9. On January 31st, the group cached supplies for the return trip. That detail shows planning, and it becomes a timeline anchor later on. On February 1st, conditions worsened. Based on recovered materials and route reconstruction, the group drifted off their intended line and ended up higher on a slope than planned near the pass area. Instead of dropping into the tree line to camp with cover, they pitched their tent on an exposed hillside. Nothing about that camp suggests they planned to leave it. Most of their boots and heavy clothing stayed in the tent. What happened after that isn't documented by any survivor. The next confirmed point is the tent found empty. When the search teams found the tent on February 26th, the first impression wasn't wreckage. It was still standing, partially buried, still anchored. In testimony from the original investigation, searcher Boris Slobstov described wind-packed snow covering the tent and the entrance area, and described skis and pools left around the campsite. He also stated that after confirming nobody was inside, they did not immediately take the items out of the tent. That matters because it tells you how the discovery was treated. Not like a campsite to be cleaned up, but like a crime scene being preserved for investigation. Inside were boots and warm clothing, along with supplies and personal items. Investigators and later summaries describe an opening cut through the tent fabric and describe it as made from inside the tent. A short distance from the tent, searchers reported footprints leading downslope toward the forest, with signs of inadequate footwear. The tent became a crucial piece of evidence. It shows what they left behind. The tracks show what they did next, and the direction is clear, downhill to the trees. The forest was the closest place with cover and materials. Near the tree line, by a large cedar, searchers found the remains of a fire and the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. A fire is what you do when you've lost shelter. It gives you heat for a short time, but it doesn't replace a tent. The fire also suggests urgency and effort. It means they were still trying to solve the problem in a practical way. Get out of the wind, make heat, and use the tree line as a base to regroup. The fire site tells you something else. Whatever sent them out of that tent didn't stop there. By the time they were in the trees, the group was splitting up in the dark. After the initial discoveries at the cedar, more bodies were found between the tree line and the tent. Igor Dyatlov and Zinaida Komogorova were found on the slope along the line back toward the campsite. Later, Rustem Slobodin was found in that same general corridor. Investigators interpreted the locations as consistent with an attempt to move back toward the tent. That fits survival logic. Even damaged, the tent is structure and a windbreak. And it's where the gear is. If you reach the trees and realize you can't last the night on a small fire and minimal clothing, the tent becomes the goal again. By early March, 5 of the 9 had been found. 4 were still missing. And after that, progress depends on the weather. You can search, you can probe. You can repeat the same route again and again. The deep snow limits what you can reach and what you can see. In early May, the search finally reached the last 4. They were located in a ravine near a stream bed, buried under several meters of snow. This wasn't a place you'd spot by walking past. It took probing, digging, and persistence, even after spring conditions made it possible. They were discovered on May 4th, 1959, more than 2 months after the tent was first located. Site descriptions and later summaries note cut branches laid down in the ravine area, consistent with an attempt to create a base or shelter. This discovery changed the case because the ravine group didn't match the earlier pattern. Autopsy materials describe severe blunt trauma in this group. 2 had major chest injuries, and another had a major skull fracture. The ravine environment and delayed recovery also complicate appearance and soft tissue condition in ways that make it difficult to tell exactly what happened. Even with that context, the core point remains. The record suggests more than exposure alone, ending the lives of these young adventurers. By this point, the case doesn't need a strange theory to feel disturbing. The record supports a basic chain. The group loses confidence in the tent as a safe shelter. They move downhill to the trees, where there's cover and firewood. Fire is made, which buys time. Then the group splits for an unknown reason. Some stay near the fire, some attempt to return to the tent, and some end up deeper in the forest, where there's evidence of an effort to build another shelter. That part is important. It suggests the group didn't simply run until they collapsed. At least for a while, people were still trying to make choices that would keep them alive. What the file cannot provide is the inside of the tent, the exact moment that made them leave, the timing of the split, the specific event that caused the ravine injuries. That's where the investigation ends and interpretation begins. The Soviet investigation documented the tent, the tracks, the belongings, and the body locations. It also looked for evidence of robbery or a clear outside cause. The case closed in May 1959 with a conclusion that has been translated and paraphrased many ways since. The core idea was that the hikers died due to powerful natural forces, without a specific mechanism named and the way people expected. A lot of theories appeared over the years. Most are impossible to prove, and the insufficient case record leaves much to the imagination. Most explanations focus on a natural event that made the tent unsafe, followed by a rapid survival breakdown. This, however, doesn't explain why they left the tent so quickly and without their equipment. It also calls into question why they cut their way out and where the blunt force trauma came from. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened an official review focused on natural causes. In 2020, prosecutors publicly pointed to an avalanche scenario as the most likely explanation. In 2021, researchers Johann Gohm and Alexander Puzrin published a peer-reviewed model focused on a delayed slab avalanche. Their work described how wind bloating and the tent platform cuts could contribute to a delayed release, and how that could lead to a rust exit and injuries without requiring an outside attacker. None of this recreates the night minute by minute, but it narrows what plausibly fits the record. The Dyatlov Pass incident survives as a mystery because the evidence, while straightforward, doesn't lend itself to a simple explanation. The tent is found still standing, with the group's boots and warm clothing still inside. The tent was cut, allegedly, from the inside. Footprints led toward the forest and to a fire at the tree line. Along that route, and around the fire, 5 bodies are discovered in various states. The last 4 are found months later in a ravine under deep snow, with severe trauma documented in the autopsies. The original case closed in 1959 with broad language about a powerful natural force, but little explanation of what it could be. Later reviews and research lean toward a natural trigger like an avalanche, with the 2021 slab avalanche model being the most plausible mechanism for a rust exit. Unfortunately, the investigation can never uncover what happened inside that tent. With the tent still standing, why would these young adults flee their only shelter? So the record ends where it began, with the shelter left behind, and no good explanation as to why. If you're listening from somewhere warm, remember how thin the line is. In the dead of winter, the shelter isn't comfort, it's life.